Welcome everyone. Parshas Vayechi. Vayechi Yaakov. Yaakov lived. This is about the life of Yaakov. Actually, it's about the death of Yaakov. Yaakov dies in this parsha. But it says Vayechi Yaakov. Yaakov lived 147 years. All right. Now, there's something that we need to discuss about Yaakov's life. Because in last week's parsha, when he meets with Paro sees him apparently as being very old. Some of the commentaries say that he didn't look good. He looked very like he had been through a lot, which he had been. And Paro says, well, how old are you? And they say, because he didn't look so good at that point. And he says his years were ma'aturatim, not small and not good. And there's a whole discussion. Maybe he complained, and it could be that when the measure was punished, he complained, shouldn't have complained. But that's not our topic tonight. Our topic is that one of the forefathers, the Bechir, the prime of the forefathers, said his life was hard. And it was. 130 years of Yaakov's life, it was really, really rough. And that was just the truth. He wasn't telling Paro something that wasn't true. Whether he should have said it, shouldn't have said it, that's not the point. The point is it was one thing after another. The fights with Esav, dealing with Esav, then he goes to Lavan, then he's got the problem with Dinah, then he's got Rachel died, he's got Yosef, he's got everything's going on with him. His life is really hard, very hard. And it's very much in contrast to the other forefathers who were kings. I mean, essentially, okay, Avram in his early years, it was hard. Yeah, he was fighting against Nimrod. But once Avram becomes Avraham, he becomes wealthy. They want to make him the king. That's the Medrash. The Medrash says that after the war of the four kings and the five kings, it said they went to Emek Melech. The valley of the king. And the Medrash says, they said to Avram, you be the king of the world. And Avram said, no, the world's got a king. But he was viewed as royalty. And so was Yitzchak. Even though he had the problem with Gror, he got sent out of Gror with Avimelech, but still, he was the great Yitzchak that people were saying. The reason why they wanted to chase him out of when he was by Gror with Avimelech was people were saying, I'd rather have the leftover refuse of Yitzchak and not the golden diamonds of Avimelech. Yitzchak is so great. So their lives seem to be good in a certain sense and full of wealth and success. Yaakov's life was difficult for 130 years, and it was very rough. And I want to know why. I want to discuss today why was 130 years of Yaakov so rough. Now, even more fascinating, at the end of the 130 years, Yaakov goes to Mitzrayim for 17 years. Now, there is a Gemara, and the Medrash also says, we say it in davening, we say it when we bench, we say, Bakol Mikol Kol, Hashem should bless you with all and from all and all. Those terms of all are terms that were used by the forefathers. Okay, Avram was Bakol, and Yisrael was Mikol, and Yaakov was Kol. What does all mean? So the Gemara says that God gave them a taste of the world to come in this world. Okay, the forefathers and foremothers had, is everyone hearing me okay? Ayel's not hearing me. Is everyone else hearing me okay? Just motion if you want.
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. Good. So the forefathers had this this portion of the world to come in this world. Yaakov also got it. When did he get it? And this is very bizarre. The last 17 years of his life. That means he's in Israel, his life, and outside of Israel, but that was all rough. The last 17 years is called good. And that was a taste of the world to come. The commentaries say the Gematria, the miracle value of Tov, is 17. And the last 17 years life were good. But the first 130 were really rough. Why? What happened? He came to Egypt. Of all places, Egypt's going to be the good life for him. What's going on? Why? Why in the 30 years? We need to understand that. Something I want to understand about the parsha is I want to understand there's Yaakov dies in this week's parsha. It's a very strange Gemara. The Gemara says that one rabbi said Yaakov didn't lomes. Yaakov didn't die. He didn't die. So the Gemara said, he didn't die. they embalmed him and they eulogized him, and he didn't die. There's a verse, in quotes a verse, that shows Yaakov didn't die. What do you mean I didn't die? Okay, I understand a verse, but how do we understand the idea Yaakov didn't die when we know in the Parsha he did die, as the Talmud says? So what is this concept Yaakov didn't die? Something I want to talk about. The third thing I want to talk about is, we mentioned you saw Yosef, so you have to bring the idea of Yosef. So Yosef, in this week's Parsha, what he does is he brings his children to Yaakov to get a blessing. Famous case. We bless our kids on Friday night. So he brings the kids to Yaakov, and he brings them in a way that Yosef will give the blessing to Menashe first, the firstborn on the right side, and will give the blessing, the second blessing to the younger one, to Ephraim. And Yaakov flips his hands around. He switches his hands. Sikas Yadav. He crisscrosses his hands, and he puts the right hand on the younger Ephraim. And Yosef says, no, that's not right. He tries to move his hands. And Yaakov says, no. I know, Yadati bin Yadati, I know, but the younger one, Ephraim, has to get the greater blessing. Manasseh will be great too, but Ephraim will be even greater. Yeshua ben Nun comes from him. So I want to understand a little bit the argument between Yaakov and Yosef, and why Yosef thought, Yosef knew his father was the great Yaakov. What was the argument why Yosef thought the blessing should go to Menashe first and Yaakov didn't agree? Those are the 3 points I want to talk about tonight. And we'll see a lot of other stuff. We had a very, very important class tonight. So let us begin. Now, to understand all of this, we got to go back to the very, very beginning. We got to go back to Adam and Chava. Okay? And we have to understand something. Adam and Chava are the first creations of the world, first human beings. And the sages tell us they were created on Erev Shabbos, on Friday, to come into Shabbos. They come into Shabbos, and what would have happened is that would have become Olam Haba. That would be called Shabbos HaGadol, Great Shabbos. So it says that Adam and Chava were created in such a way that they would lead right into eternity. So it's like this, and this is how you have to understand the whole story of Bereshis. The world is being created. It's God conceals himself. He brings the world then into a state of creation, fixing it up and revealing himself step by step till day 6. Day 6, Friday, Erev Shabbos, Adam and Chava are created, and they have the mission to finish the job of the world. That's why they were created. We're created to have a task, a mission. So Hashem could obviously make the world perfect. He didn't want to. He wanted us to finish the job. And Friday, Adam and Chava created. They have mitzvahs to do in the Garden of Eden. And if they do them properly, that's going to lead the world into the Shabbos, and that's going to be Olam Haba. Okay. We know they don't succeed. They do the Chet V'etz Das Torah. Now, there's a question here. Let's say they wouldn't have sinned. So they would have gone to Shabbos, never in the world to come. What about us? Where would we have been? Right? Where would we have been? Same thing if our forefathers didn't sin by the sin of the golden calf, where would we be? We wouldn't, what would we be? As a matter of fact, the Gemara says we have to be thankful that these things happened, because if it didn't happen, it would be like we were not even born. Meaning that we may have come into the world, but the mission of the world would have been over. If our Adam and Rishon would have succeeded, and Chava would have succeeded, then the job would have been done, and we'd be born into a perfect world. But we wouldn't have any work to do, which is the crucial part. You want to be able to do the work of fixing the world up. That's your portion. So if Adam and Chava would have succeeded and gone into Shabbos without sinning, we would have come out, I guess, eventually, but we wouldn't have the mission anymore because they would have done it. We would have been included in them. This is what the sages tell us, that all of the souls of all the people that are going to come into this world ever were all included in Adam and Chava. And that's why if they would have done it, they would have done it for us too, because we were in them. The same way that the child is in the DNA, in the genetic makeup of the parents, the mind, so to speak, of the parents, so too we were in the minds of the forefathers and back to Adam and Chava. So if Adam and Chava would have succeeded, they would have fixed the world up. When they didn't succeed, the mission now falls to all of us. Okay, the 6 days of creation become elongated and become 6,000 years. That's what we're in right now. The 6,000 years of creation. Okay, we're getting close to at the end of the 6th day. When we get to 6,001, we're in already the 7th day. We're in Shabbos. So the 6 days of creation become the 6,000 years, and then the 1,000 years afterwards of all the certain aspect of Olam Haba, that the world to come, that will be what would have been compared to Shabbos in time of Adam and Chava. Okay, very good. Now they didn't succeed, so we got a mission. So, all right, on one hand, we say, great, they didn't succeed, we got a job. We got to understand what went wrong, so we got to know what our jobs are. Okay, so now we know that the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, they ate the tree of good and evil, but we don't really understand what that means. And I'm not going to get so much into too much of the Kabbalistic explanation of it, but what happened with this tree of knowledge of good and evil? It's not that they ate a food and therefore we got these problems. The sages tell us that the chet, the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, had blended into it. It consisted of the 3 cardinal sins of murder, illicit relations, and idolatry. The whole rebellion and the challenge that Adam and Chava had in the Garden of Eden was so great, and their misstep was so great, it was like the sum total of all bad things that a person could do in this world. If they would have been successful, they would have done the greatest thing. They would have completed the mission of the world. But when they fell very, very great. Now, how do you see that their sin includes the 3 cardinal sins? And they have to understand that even the 3 cardinal sins, what does that mean? Why are there 3 sins? Why are there 3 sins that are so bad that you got to give your life up for? We can't differentiate between good and bad. You can't break any of the commandments. The deeper meaning is the 3 cardinal sins, the 3 sins that you give your life for, are really the epitome of everything that can go wrong in the world. Let's explain. There's a mission we always talk about. It says there are 3 things that take a person out of this world. There are 3 traits. There are 3 ways to relate to people. So for example, if you think about how many possible relationships there are 3 possible relationships. Man to himself, man to his fellow man, and people to Hashem. Okay? A person to himself, a person to another person, and a person to Hashem. Those are the 3 possible relationships. If you think about it, you realize they line up perfectly. There is a problem when a person can't relate to themselves. That's called unbridled desire. It means you know this thing is bad for you. You know that doing this thing will harm you, but you can't control yourself. So that is a breakdown in the relationship between man and himself. Okay, that means that I have desire, even though I know it's bad for me, I can't see past it. That is the root of the cardinal sin of Gilui Arais, illicit relations. Illicit relations is you're so obsessed with what it is, you don't think about the results. You need it right now. The desire overcame you. That's illicit relations. That's why it's one of the 3 cardinal sins. Because it means you're not a person anymore. I mean, you really broke the most basic fundamental aspect of your own responsibility to yourself. And think about it. When you know something's bad and you know you're going to suffer for it, how do you do it? Would you take poison and eat it? No, we wouldn't do that. We drop dead on the spot. But if you know something's poisonous for us and we'll still do it, so that means that we are really not in control of ourselves for our own best interests. That's one. The second thing the Mishnah says, the second trait that if it goes wild, it's really bad, is the trait of jealousy. Jealousy. Okay, and you see that. Jealousy is like a weird thing. Jealousy just, it means it's not even that I want the thing. That could be a different problem. Jealousy is, it bothers me that you have it. So like, let's say when I see the other person with the car that I want, then that really is the knife in my heart. He has the car and I don't. That's jealousy. And when a person looks and defines themselves by what other people have, that will destroy a person, because you see that people that are jealous, they can't like what they have because the other guy still has more. That obviously is the same trait that leads to murder. What was the first murder? Cain and Hevel. Why did Cain kill Abel? Why did Cain kill Hevel? Because he was jealous of him. Okay, different things. His offering was answered. He had an extra twin. All the things that he was jealous. So it could lead to murder. That's the breakdown relationship between man and his fellow man, people to people. It's like, why should we feel bad when someone else has good? But that's a challenge of a human being. Instead of thinking about our own world and judging what we have and what we need, we measure ourselves by what others have. Okay? That's the second of the negative traits that leads to a cardinal sin. The third one is honor. Somebody who chases after honor in an uncontrolled way, that is a very, very negative thing. See, people will do these crazy things. They want people's accolades, they want people's attention. That in itself is also the sin of idolatry. It's a breakdown relationship between man and Hashem, between human beings and God. Why? Because if I see that the honor belongs to Hashem and I am the one who has to bring that out in the world, I don't want it for myself. I say, listen, yes, I'm great because I'm an emanation of God's will in the world. I didn't build myself. I didn't make myself. So when a person wants the honor, that breaks down between man and Hashem, and that really was idolatry, because people misunderstand idolatry. Idolatry was that there's been why people want to worship idols for, because according to their rationales, you can manipulate their idols to get what you want. Whatever, if it's spiritual forces, whatever they thought they were doing, or maybe they were doing, they were trying to manipulate these forces to get what they want. Even the crazy idolaters who didn't have any wisdom to them, if you do this, you'll get what you want. You can't do that with Hashem. You can't, manipulate Hashem. He knows everything, so you can't manipulate him. Idolatry, you can, because in the end, I'll do what I do to get what I want. I am the God, right? That's the idolatry, is really making yourself the God, because then you can do what you want to do and get what you want. But when you relate to Hashem, he knows you're faking. You're trying to manipulate something. You're trying to do something else. You can't fool God, fool Hashem. So that's the sin of idolatry. These are the three cardinal sins because they are the roots of a breakdown between man and his fellow man, humans to humans, or humans to himself, or a person to Hashem. That was all included in the sin of Adam and Chava. And where do you see that? Look at the text. The text, when they saw the tree, it says, the Chava said, it was desirous to her eyes. That means desire was out of control. There was some place where this tree was a pleasure that they were seeking that doesn't matter. It's bad for you. It's going to kill you. Doesn't matter. I gotta have it. Desire. That's the root of illicit relations. I just can't control it. Next thing, what happened? So it says that they brought death into the world. That's murder. Well, Chava gave it to Adam. However, we understand all the different things, but eating it was going to bring death into the world. Say she gave it to him. Medrash says she didn't want to be left, she didn't want to be alone. He would make somebody else, but Adam agreed to it. He even says, the Gemara says that Adam said to Hashem, well, she gave it, I'm going to keep eating it. Like Adam was a willing partner in this thing, but they thereby brought death into the world. Okay, and where do you see now idolatry? So what was the first statement of the serpent? It was, if you eat this tree, Visan Kilokim, you'll be like God. That was the attraction. Why do you have to be subservient to God? You could make your own world. You could be your own boss. That yearning for honor led them to do this, the chet, and the sin. And that's why it was such a terrible thing. They could have gone to the highest highs. Instead, they fell to the lowest lows. And therefore, the sin they did really included all the problems, the three cardinal sins, which all the negative commandments of the Torah all come from those three. So that is what happened in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Chava, we were part of them, were able to challenge all the challenges of desire and of haughtiness and of jealousy, that they could have all overcome all that stuff and fix the world up. And when they fell very, very great. And when they fell, what they did was, it says, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It means they made a new world. The world became a new world. It became a world that was mixed up good and bad. That's what it was. And that's our world, by the way. That's our world. Nobody is all good or all bad. No, things are all good and all bad, essentially. There's, you could have something that you can use it for good, use it for bad. I don't know. What thing, is your iPhone good? Yeah. Is it bad? Yeah. That's what you use it for. Because that's the world we live in. We live in a world where it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's mixed in. That wasn't the world before the Chet. The world before the sin of Adam and Chava was good. And there was no negativity in either one of them. There was no negativity. They looked at the world, they decided to do what they did. And once they did, it created in them and in us parts that push us to negativity. That was not part of them. It was not part of anything. Now it's the reality of the world. It's part of our world. And you got to check yourself. So you want this and you want that. And even you hear some good news from your friend and you're happy. And then all of a sudden you got this sense of like, oh wait a minute, why not me? Wow. And you feel bad. And you feel bad about yourself. Like, shouldn't I just be happy? Why do I have this? But we do. And that's the work to pull that out. So the famous thing, the Baal Tanya says an amazing thing. He says like this. He says people when they're davening, when they're praying, so there's also a thought comes to their head. That's not a holy thought, not a good thought. So people get mad. How can I think that? He says, no, that's the wrong way to understand this. We're not tzaddikim. If you're a perfect tzaddik, then yeah, why that thought popped into your head, I don't know. But we're not that way. And therefore, when it does, it's an opportunity for you to gently push it out and stay focused on what you have to do. That is a job of ours. That's the job of pulling out the evil and leaving the good. And that's what we do. By the way, that's our whole life. That's our eating process. You eat food. What happens? Your body takes out the good and pushes away the bad. That's what we're doing. What we're doing is the world is mixed up good and bad, and therefore we have to separate, get rid of the bad and leave the good, but it's all mixed up right now. Okay, now, that whole thing that Adam and Chava didn't succeed, that mission now fell to the rest of the world. All of their progeny, all the people that are going to come out from them had to now do that job. That's us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are descendants of the forefathers and foremothers. And what made them the forefathers and foremothers was the idea that they actually did everything in a general way, and now we're playing out the particulars. What the sages say, the actions of the forefathers is a sign for the children, meaning the forefathers and the foremothers, what they did was they did the job of fixing up the world, but we weren't a nation yet. They were individuals. They were individuals that were the mothers and fathers of the descendants that will come out. So we got to do it in the details. We got to deal with our world, which the forefathers and foremothers did not have a world like ours. They were not living in the modern time. But we're fixing up a particular part that they did. They fixed it in the general way and in a whole way. Now we're doing the particulars. Therefore, the sages tell us that I'm going to talk about the male side. The female side also has the similar aspect, and we'll do it in the women's class. But it says that, like, it says Avra, there's different parts of the soul. There's three aspects of the lower part of the soul called the nefesh, ruach, neshama. Three, and it says Abraham was the nefesh, was one, let's say Gilgul, his soul was an aspect of Adam's, and Yitzhak was another, and then Yaakov was another, was the aspect of the neshama of Adam. And they each came to fix up the sin of Adam and Chava. Oh, beautiful. Well, let's line it up. Abraham fixed up the sin of Adam Arishon in illicit relations, desire. How do you know that? So we have that very strange statement we learned a while back where it says that Abraham goes to Egypt and he sees Sarah and he said, Taya, Dad, now I know you're beautiful. So we talked about it. Ayala asked about it a few weeks ago also. Well, what does this mean that he didn't know she was beautiful? Very, very strange. What does that mean? Now to marry a person, a woman, lets you see her, the couple has to see each other and agree to it. Limi doesn't know. What does that mean? So the deeper meaning is like this. It says, the Medrash says that he knew she was beautiful from something that happened. They were traveling to Egypt and usually people disheveled, whatever. He saw her reflection in the water. What does it mean he saw her reflection? When you see a reflection, you're not seeing the person, you're seeing their image. Abraham fixed up illicit relations because he never saw Sarah and her beauty distinct from who she was. The whole aspect of illicit relations and desire is what? Is that you see the shiny thing on the outside and you don't really think, well, what's inside of this? You know, you see all the glitter, it looks so delicious, looks so great, but it's poison inside. That is possible to do when a person is obsessed with the externalities. When a person sees what the thing is, he looks at it totally different. Avram saw Sarah as beautiful, beginning to end. The neshama, the soul, expressing itself to the body. He never saw them as separate. When he was going down to Egypt, he said, now I know that you also have just a physical beauty that the Egyptians who are not spiritual, not going to look at you properly, they're going to see that only. That's what it means he saw through the reflection. He saw that her externality, when he looked at her, he saw her neshama and her physical beauty as an expression of that. When he saw the reflection, he said, oh, physically alone, you have a beautiful image, and now you got to be worried because the Egyptians will notice that. So the Abraham is known to fix up illicit relations and desire because he took the externality of desire, which is just the outside and not what's inside, and he put them together. He said, no, I'm going for the substance of what it is. You're a beautiful neshama, a beautiful expression of that, and I don't separate the two. He fixed up thereby desire and illicit relations. Okay, Yitzchak, we know he was willing to have himself offered on the altar in the case of Yitzchak, and that fixed up the relationship between man and God. That he said, I'm going to be an offering to Hashem. So he fixed up now to break that between man and God, and that was idolatry. Yaakov, what did Yaakov do? Yaakov's a little different than you would have thought. Yaakov, it says in the Zohar, it says that Yaakov fixed up murder. It's a little funny. It's hard to. Why? What is murder? Murder really is a disconnection of body and soul. That's what murder is, right? How does a person die? What does it mean the person's dead? It means the soul leaves the body. You know, the body can be, perfectly intact. The soul is perfectly intact, but there's not a unification anymore, body and soul. Yaakov was the one who put it all together. This is what we have to understand tonight. That was Yaakov's quality, that he was called an Ish Shalom. He was whole. And that's why he is the culmination of the forefathers. It's a buildup. It's a process. To get to Yaakov, Yaakov is now the one that's called whole. Okay? So much so that it says, there's a very famous Rashi, it says that when Yaakov was ready to marry Rachel, he says to Lavan, give me my wife and let me let me have relations with her, and and Rashi says that's how Yaakov talks, even though the lightest person doesn't talk like that. He says no, but Yaakov he already had no negativity inside of him at all. He understood. I'm getting married. I'm gonna create children. Like Adam and Chava. Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden, before the eighth tree of knowledge of good and evil, when they had relations, there was no embarrassment there because there was no Yetzer Hara. They were doing a mitzvah. Like I do a mitzvah when I put on tefillin. A mitzvah with their arm. They were doing a mitzvah with their bodies to create children and to be unified. So Yaakov is the one that is whole, unified. I think into now that's how also he was able to keep, even though he wasn't supposed to marry Rachel and Leah, and he had to because of the situation. But it says that no one would have been able to pull this off because it's a relationship. Those who have sisters will know this. It's a very, very bad situation to marry two sisters. There's naturally rivalry in every situation, but certainly two sisters is not a good thing to do. Yaakov was called Ish Shalom. He was a whole person who was able to do it because of who he was. So Yaakov unified body and soul, and therefore he fixed up the sin of murder. Okay, great, wonderful class. A lot of nice ideas, fantastic. But we still didn't answer our questions. We understand what Adam and Chava did wrong and how it contained all, but that doesn't explain, Yaakov, Avraham, he worked on whatever he worked on and he fixed up his problems. Yitzhak offered his life to Hashem, so he fixed his problems. Why did Yaakov have 130 years of problems? Become the person you became. He became a great person. He unified body and soul. Why did he have 130 years of problems, which is what happened? We didn't answer our question. We started out by saying, how come, Yaakov fixed his part, fine. Avram fixed his part, great, wonderful. But our problem was that it seems like Yaakov's paying a penalty of a certain time, 130 years, you're going to have it rough. And now the last 17 years, okay, now you have a taste of the world to come. Why? Why didn't he fix it up, when he first was a righteous person, and then have 100 good years, have 130 of tough years? There's a very, very, very deep thing here. And we need to understand this. It says in our Rizal, it says that when Adam and Chava did the Chet, they mixed the world up with good and bad. It became mixed up. And Adam was they were both trying to fix it up. They're trying to fix it up. They were trying to fix the world up and what they had done wrong. And it says that Adam separated from Chava to do tshuva. They separated to tshuva. And it says that when he was in the mikvah, he was in the mikvah all the time, and it was 130 years. Again, time's a little different then, of course, but 130 years of separation between Adam and Chava. That's when you look in the text. You'll see it's 130 years. That's when he comes back with Chava after 130 years, and then he gives birth to space. Don't need to meet things.
So wait, so who is this? Me? You have to.
I'm
the most iconic of all. The most iconic probably.
Okay. So now 130 years that Adam and Chava separated. And the Talmud says something very, very wild. It says that during the 130 years, I'll try to say this in a rated G way as much as I can, that 130 years that Adam was separated from Chava, there were still forces coming out from him unintentionally. And that's just because he created things in the world, he mixed up good and evil. And the negative things that were coming out during 130 years were creating negative forces. He was trying to separate for good reasons and understandable. He was trying to do tshuva, fix up what he did wrong, and she was trying to fix up what she did wrong. But that period where they were not able to unite properly as a couple, so that separation caused things to come out. during the 130 years that Adam was separated, not on purpose, but just because that's the way the world was. There was different negative forces in the world, and it was coming out. These negative forces that were being created. It was the Gemara says it was creating these what's called shidalids, we call it demons in English, and negative things out. Okay, so now that's what happened in the what was happening with 130 years. That is what Yaakov fixed up with 130 years of suffering. Why? Because Yaakov was the only one who could do it. Because Yaakov was the person who had no negativity inside, like in the very beginning. He was back, except that he had. Someone really needs to mute themselves. Someone keeps speaking, so please try to okay.
Rabbi, don't you have a control that you can mute everyone?
I think I just did.
Okay.
Hold on. Mute all. Allow. No, that's it. I got it now. Okay, great. So now, what is this 130 years? 130 years was the time when there was a separation and the negative forces came out into the world. And it wasn't Adam's fault. It wasn't Chava's fault. But there was negativity in the world, and the seed came out and it created negative forces. That was only the job that Yaakov could do, because Yaakov was like Adam before the sin. It says the face of Yaakov, the shufra of Yaakov looked like Adam. Because according to one medrash, Yaakov was born circumcised, just like Adam was. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world of good and evil. It's all mixed up. And that's the way the world is. Yaakov had gotten back to a place of a world that was all good. And that's who he was. That's exactly who he was. He was on that spiritual level. And so therefore, the 130 years of the challenge, the difficulty he went to, was fixing up Adam and Chava on their 130 years of separation, where unintentionally bad things were happening because the world was messed up. And that is why the sages say, according to one opinion, it says that Yaakov didn't die. That's the Gemara's conclusion. He didn't die. What do you mean he didn't die? They eulogized him. You know, what is death? Why do we die? What happens? So the Derech Hashem says the reason why he dies is like this. We have good and bad mixed into us. When we die, our bodies go back into the earth. And then when we're reformed, it's only from the positive. All the negative aspects that became linked into our system are not there when we're reestablished in the world to come. But Yaakov didn't need that because he didn't have it. So Yaakov is like a guy who takes off his clothes and puts it back on. His soul left, it's true. He went to the upper worlds, and his body is now being stored. He didn't die. His body's being stored because there's no negativity. By the way, they even have stories of great tzaddikim who it says their bodies didn't disintegrate. Actually, many tzaddikim, they testified, they saw that their bodies never disintegrate. But be that as it may, that was Yaakov. That's what it means he didn't die, because he was on that level. That's the level he was on. And that's also the last thing we mentioned with Yosef. Why did Yosef want the blessings to go to Menashe first and Yaakov flipped his hands around? What does that mean? Menashe and Ephraim were two approaches in life. The word Menashe means Nashani, Hashem made me forget all my troubles, all my problems. It's removing bad. Ephraim is the word para, God made me expand in this world. Yosef said the way to greatness is Menashe first. Say no, control yourself. Which is true. For us, that's the way we start. It says, Sumeira, move from evil and then go to good. You got to stop and not do things you shouldn't do first, and then you can expand. That's what Yosef said. Give the blessing to Menashe first. Yaakov said, I'm expansion. I'm in a world of perfection. And therefore, the blessing that comes from me has to go to Ephraim, who is not the one who has to remove the evil. It's gone already. He's the one who teaches Torah. He learned Torah by Yaakov. He's the one who's the expansion into a world of perfection. Now, what does this how do we relate this to us? How does this affect us in our lives? It's very, very important here. I was speaking with someone today, and I really kind of thought about it. I think it's something important to understand. We don't always know why we go through things. We try to be really smart and figure it out, this and that, and you don't always know. Look at Yaakov. I mean, the most righteous person in history goes through 130 years of suffering, and apparently was hidden from him what we're saying, otherwise it wouldn't have been the same. So, and it's not even anything he did. He's got a mission from who his soul is, what he has to accomplish. Now you'll say to me, Rabbi, that's not fair. Why should he have that problem? And the answer is, this is what's so important for us, is that becomes his mission, and that becomes his portion in the world to come. That's the way it is. Whatever your challenge is, that is your soul, and that when you do it, that becomes your eternity. You don't want to trade in your mission for someone else's mission, even if you think, oh, they have it easier, which you never know what people have it. But you don't want to change in because your mission is you. So Yaakov, yeah, he had it tough. He didn't know why it was so tough. And now we know, we're explaining, because he was fixing up the world in the way that no one else could, and preparing the way for perfection in the world. And it came through him, but he didn't know it. And so when we go through challenges, that we have to remember that. There are deeper reasons. Does anyone here know, what your soul was in a previous life? And probably most of us, it seems, have already been here before. That's, according to many commentaries, that's what it would seem to be the reality already. Do you know what you were? Do you know what you did? You don't know what you did. So what you're going through now is to fix it up, but you don't even know that. That is the view that we have to take from this, is that there are cosmic things going on the soul level that happen to each and every one of us. And we have to be mispaled to daven that it should be for good, and accept it that it's going to be for good. And that's why after 130 years, all of a sudden, Yaakov, you did it. And that's why he gets the last 17 years, the numerical value, the gematria of Tov in Egypt, is his portion of the world to come. What's great is in Egypt. Why? Because 130 years he had done it. He arrived, and he understood it. And that's why even the commentaries say, the end, when he dies, the days came, when the days came to Yaakov in the end of his life, before he died, he saw the whole thing. And he realized, I see what I did. I see it was for purpose. I see I fixed these things up that when I was going through them, I didn't know. So we should take comfort in that and realize that Hashem has a plan for all of us. And that plan is way beyond our understandings, but it's all meant to bring us to where we have to be. All right. Thank you, everybody.